here's the premise, you guys. The premise is what we're going to do. Traditionally, in college classes, we say, you guys are in a group, get some ground rules, get this project done. See you later. That's not enough. So my analogy is martial arts, okay? Let's say you're taking some kind of karate, and what you do is you go into the dojo and you learn how to kick like this and kick like this and round kick and back kick, and you learn back fist and reverse punch and all that kind of stuff. And that gives you some kind of things to do, but the real program isn't in the dojo. If we're looking at this as self-defense, what happens on the street? Okay? What I'm going to do is give you a model, okay, to work from. And I'll write it up here on the board so you get it. And I'll give you the big picture first, and then we'll get into groups, and then we'll do worksheet by worksheet by worksheet. We'll do 3 different worksheets, 3 or 4 different worksheets around how does a group work together, okay? So, if I learn to kick like this, front kick, back kick, round kick, etc., and learn different punches and different blocks and all that kind of stuff, is that going to help me on the street in self-defense? Well, in the dojo, you're working with somebody who wants to learn, okay? You're practicing with each other in a safe environment. There's no gouging of the eyes, kicks to the groin, breaking of the arm, okay? On the street, you're working with somebody who's surprising you. They're generally bigger. They have malevolent intentions, like to hurt and abuse you and subdue you and take your money or worse, okay? So in the dojo, you know what's going to happen. Things are fairly predictable. We can practice and we can get some skill sets, okay? On the street corner, the bigger person with a weapon is coming up that you don't see. So you get blindsided. So when you get blindsided in a physical attack, you tend to go into physiological shock, which tends to freeze you up. Okay, generally you don't even get fight or flight going. If you get, boom, you get hit upside the head, you're like this, you're reeling, you don't know what's going on. They continue to attack, you go down on the ground, attack, take your wallet or worse, whatever kind of a thing. So, same analogy goes for working in a group. You can know all kinds of standards of common courtesy and what teamwork might look like, and we're all a bunch of good people and everything should work out, right? However, people come in with a whole bunch of different agendas. They come in with a whole bunch of different ways of believing how things should be. And your way of believing something is different than mine, is different than yours, is different than yours. Okay? What that's going to happen is that's going to clash. Unless we do something about it. Okay? So on the street, what I want to do is I want to have a way, I want to develop a response, I want to develop a system by which I'm going to defend myself. So I learned what's called an immovable arm. This stuff all the way, by the way, came from Bruce Lee, which actually started with a Buddhist nun at the Shaolin Temple. Shaolin Temple got burnt down. She taught Yim Wing Chun, and who beat up the bully in town who was trying to marry her, chased him out of town. Got handed down 8 generations to Yip Man, who taught Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee came to the United States, taught a guy named Jim DeMille. I got to learn from Jim DeMille. Didn't learn a lot, but I learned the fundamentals. And the fundamentals that Bruce Lee did were anatomical framework, disruption, emotional intensity, and straightforwardness. So what he taught was that a stance was huge. In traditional Wing Chun, they stood like this, and they would spar with their hands and do the chi sao and all this kind of stuff. Bruce Lee said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to go like this. We're going to be anatomically forward. We're always going to be springing off the back foot. So we're always moving forward, not standing passively and doing this kind of stuff. So that energy forward was huge with him. He brought the straight punch from Wing Chun, which is just simply from the chest out, just doing this all the time. Bunch of those. He brought the immovable arm, which if you put your arm in a certain structure, if you put it like this, pretty much anybody can bend it back, but if you put it like this with just this kind of angle, it's pretty much immovable, especially straight back. So that becomes a block called a bong sao, or it can be gong sao down here. It's the same structure. It's also as far out as your punch goes. It's very rigid, very, very, very tight piece. So this is anatomical structure. This is anatomical structure. Put together, that's anatomical structure with energy forward with straight punches, okay? Then he did things like train peripheral vision. We teach peripheral vision, so actually if you train peripheral vision, you can see stuff, movement about here. So that's like past my shoulder plane. So if I've trained in all this, I know that I'm in a dangerous situation. So awareness, which is one of the things you're going to get here around group process, awareness around what an attack might be, train myself in peripheral vision. I'm looking, might have just been a bird, might be a little old lady crossing the street, but I know now what's going on. And if it is an attack, then I know to switch into this anatomical structure of body forward, boom, all energy forward, punches flying like this, which now are no longer punches, but they're finger jabs to the eyes. They're ulna bones on the collarbone, breaking it. Now the guy's whole left side doesn't work, okay? So I have a plan that's going to effectively eliminate the threat, okay? Versus having no plan at all. Having no plan at all, what do I get? Boom. Knocked over, subdued, beaten down, or worse. So, it's analogized to having a group meeting together. So, if we're aware of what can go on, what might go on, and how we put together a framework, kind of like that physical anatomical structure, put together a framework so that we can guarantee our best possible shot, not a guarantee, but our best possible shot at success in a group, minimize the unnecessary conflict and stuff that might occur, maximize our potential for getting some success. Does that make sense? So in essence, instead of throwing you in a group, saying, get some ground rules, do this project, I'm going to explain to you the underpinnings, the fundamentals, the foundation for collaboration, the foundation for being able to work together as a group, positively, productively, and cohesively. Then as a group, what I'm going to ask you to do is agree on it. Okay? Key piece, agreeing. So, everybody got that kind of metaphor, analogy kind of thing? What we're going to do is create a foundation for collaboration. You have in front of you a little triangle, forming, storming, norming, performing, all that kind of stuff. Now, so I'm going to start on some stuff here, okay? And you're going to run it, this is going to be one of your assignments as well. What is your personal mission? Well, you're going to figure that out for your group too, although I'm going to help you with that, make it just a shortcut. Why are you here? What's your purpose? Okay? What's your purpose in this group? What's your purpose on the street to defend yourself? What's your purpose in life, long-term, short-term? What's your purpose? Okay, some of y'all's purpose is real easy. I'm going to get an RN degree. That's my mission right now, is to get an RN degree. There's the hill, I'm going to take it. Okay? What do you want to look like down the road? 5 years from now, I want to be a successful RN, have an excellent reputation, and one of the best OBGYN RNs in the valley, if not the state. That's my vision. Okay? What's your strategy for getting there? Okay? Well, my strategy is I'm going to go to school, those kinds of things, get my degree. In the meantime, I'm going to network with other professional organizations and see if I can go get a job and land in a place where I'm healing people, which is why I'm in this. Maybe that's your mission, is I'm going to be a healer. My mission is to heal people on the face of this earth. Okay? So we want to be clear about that. Okay? And so as a group, you want to be clear about what your personal mission is. Well, we're going to make it real simple so that you guys can just practice stuff. Okay? So your mission in your groups is just going to be to help each other get an A in this class and being able to understand how this stuff works on the street and how it might be applied. And you're going to help each other learn that. Okay? And we'll put you in groups periodically, once or twice during our class, and have you go over that stuff amongst yourselves. Okay? Clear? Okay. Vision is you walk out at the end of the corridor with stuff you can use in an interview, with the way you're able to explain your strengths and assets to your boss, to your coworkers, etc. And be able to do that well. Okay? So the strategy really is to, whatever it is to get all the steps that we need to take to do that. One of the things we want to do is learn how to work in groups. Because out in the world, you're going to learn to work in groups, right? Now, traditionally in a college class, what they'll say to you is, get in a group, and person goes to the teacher, says, God, you know, Judy just isn't pitching in, doing any work, doing any reading, not helping at all. Get used to it, that's what you're going to get on the outside, is the response you get. And I say, no, let's do better than that. So, here's how groups work. So this is on your, groups get together, they form, which you guys are going to do in this class. You're going to start forming. What you will end up doing is you'll get into storming. And by storming, I mean you're all different. And so the fact that, and we'll talk more about this in future classes as well, the fact that I'm extroverted might bother you because you're introverted and I'm a blabbermouth and you wish I'd shut up. Okay? Those kinds of things, those differences can affect things. Okay? Now, when you get through storming, you'll get to a group of norms. And by norms, I mean socially acceptable behaviors. So those can be different from group to group, organization to organization. Like if you go work with the Latin City Kings in New York City, crime, prostitution, loyalty to your brother, violence, murder even, are all norms, right? Those are socially acceptable behaviors with the Latin City Kings. Boy Scouts, different set of norms, okay? Enron, anybody remember Enron? Mm-hmm. Ripped off the United States workers for billions of dollars in pension. They had a set of norms, which was get over on the next guy, even in your own organization, so you can accrue as much wealth as possible no matter what. That was one of their norms. They didn't say that out loud. I told you about the CFO getting fired the next day, right? On the smartest man in the room. Mm-hmm. He stands up and says, we're doing something wrong. The next day he's gone. So if you don't abide by the norms, you get ostracized, okay? So if you don't believe in violence, crime, prostitution, and drugs, and loyalty to your brother and Latin City Kings, you get ostracized, okay? That kind of stuff. Okay, now, if you can get some functional norms, you can get on to performance, and high performance teams are the sought after group of people that we want in our organization. And then in order to keep that performance up, you have to keep it on ongoing continuous improvement. If you don't do that, you'll generally entropy and die. Okay? Does that make sense? This is group process as is generally known nowadays. Bill Tuckman came up with this in the 60s, and it's pretty much held true. Okay? Now every once in a while, you get a good bunch of people together, they'll get through here, they stick, they get highly functional norms, they get up to high performance. However, that's on the low percentage, maybe 5% of the time, and that's being optimistic. Okay? Generally speaking, people's natural differences will kick in and they'll get dysfunctional norms. They won't be operating at an optimum level at best. Yeah? You didn't have a question?
Yes. Get you next time.
Okay. All right. So here's the deal. Any group has some kind of bottom line results. Any organization has some kind of bottom line. You know what I mean by bottom line results? Mm-hmm. Anybody not know? So profit dollars, volunteer hours, student retention rates, students who graduate rate. Because colleges are, how many, got X amount of people enrolling in school, how many of them graduate? Those are bottom line results. That's why, ultimately why you're there. That's your mission being acted out. So what are some bottom line results? Doesn't matter what they are. In your case, you guys want to walk out of here with some stuff you can use on the street, and you happen to get an A in the class as well, okay? In order to have this happen, you have to have some kind of action. Some kind of productivity, production, something's got to be acted out in order to get these results. You're not going to get results without action, correct? Make sense? Okay. However, you can have a lot of different actions. Are they focused exactly on those bottom line results? We can have a lot of action over here playing chess, but if we're supposed to be making hamburgers, we're not getting our bottom line results, correct? So we want to have focused stuff. So what do you suppose you need for that? People. Who does the action? People, right? We're going to call them high performance teams because they're very focused and they're getting maximum impact off of minimum effort. Do you suppose that these high performance teams are going to thrive in a positive or negative work environment? Absolutely. And we've got data to show that up too. All this stuff is backed up by data. This isn't just good ideas anymore, okay? To get a positive work environment, what do you suppose you're going to need to have happen?
Happy employees.
Pardon?
Positive, happy employees.
Okay, how do you get those?
Collaboration.
Are you a positive, happy employee? Yeah, oh great, come on down. Yeah.
Well, you have to go through this whole process then, right? You have to have personalities that mix well together. You have to have a work environment that isn't threatening. You have to have somewhere that you feel like you're safe and you can actually express yourself and do what
Absolutely.
you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
You're starting to get a connection, right? Here's the missing link, and this is what we're going to work on today. This is the focus of the work we're going to work on today. And my premise is that you get deliberate about these norms. You don't get what accidentally comes out of here as your norms. You get deliberate about what they're going to be. Does that make sense? Let's go get deliberate about it. All right, let's do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an agreement about how we're going to work together, how we're going to interact with each other. That make sense? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to call it, you can call it anything you want, a leadership philosophy, working agreement, social contract, positive engagement practice, doesn't really matter. On here we call it a professionalism standards. Okay. And I've got worksheets that you can work off of. You're just not going to pull the stuff out of the air, although I encourage you to pull stuff out of the air. What your grandma said 20 years ago might be a good idea to put in here. Doesn't really matter. The thing that matters is you get a batch of behaviors that you all agree on to work together with. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So now we want to have one of the stickiest things that happens in groups is conflict. And it's inevitable. And there's benefits out of it. But how do we manage conflict? We want to have a conflict management system. So instead of just letting conflict happen and we don't know what to do with it, just like the conflict on the street, if we don't know what to do, we're probably going to get subdued by it and conquered by it. If we don't manage conflict, conflict will manage us. Because it will live and grow like weeds in a garden, like a bad virus. Conflict will do that, okay? And we're going to cover each of these pieces. The third piece is you want to have a way to communicate with each other, okay? And have a framework for it. And in that framework is not only how are we going to get information to and from each other? We're going to use email, phone calls, share phone numbers, blah, 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 text, inbox, whatever it is. But also, how do we manage our meetings? Meetings. How do we manage our meetings? Okay? And again, this is something you go out in the business world and ask people, is a bunch of your time wasted in meetings? 80% of the people, 100% of the people raise their hand. Meetings aren't run well. One of the things you're going to learn in this class is how to run meetings from a very economic, efficient point of a framework for that kind of lean strategy around meetings, okay? So, we're going to work on this. I'm going to go over this conflict management system with you. There's not a lot to do to it. You can tweak it if you want, but it's been tweaked for about 15 years. So it's pretty solid. And then we'll go over a communication worksheet, and we'll go over a meeting management worksheet. Okay? Any questions? Comments? Answers? Riddles? Jokes? Did I miss anything? Oh, yes I did. So out of this strategy, mission, vision, strategy, just to flesh this out, and just so you can relate this to a business model, This is basically a business plan. If you have a strategy to make stuff happen around what you want to look like while you're here, you have the capacity to do it. This is all on your sheet in front of you, which means resources, time, money, location, skill sets, etc. That makes sense? Can you do it? I used to work on, this is fake, this is not real. I used to work on auto bodies and use a lot of composite and fiberglass stuff. I think I want to start a barbecue restaurant. Do I have the capacity? Okay. If you have all of this, can you implement it? Can you make it happen? Okay. And then if you can implement it, which is still tough to do, especially around changeover, can you sustain it over the long term? Okay? Because if you can't sustain it, you're not going to realize your vision. And if you don't realize your vision, guess what? Failure, probably. At least not successful at best. Okay? Then every once in a while you want to evaluate what's going on. Okay? So, why are you here? What do you want to look like? How are you going to do it? Do you have the resources? Can you implement it? Can you sustain it over the long term? And then reevaluate what you're doing every once in a while because you want to avoid status quo. Now, my big point about this is your strategy contains two things. One is mechanical, and we're not going to confront that here. But that's, you know, what automobile parts come in on the back dock that need to be shipped out to customers. What happens to a box of romaine when it lands on the back dock? Where does it go? Here's a batch of dresses that come in from somebody. Where do they get stored, put, merchandise, etc. That's the mechanical stuff. The other piece is biological. What kind of strategy do you have for working with the organisms in your group or organization, which are called people? Right? What's the strategy for how people are going to get along? Now, I got to tell you, the organizations, the groups I run into, don't even have this. They think if they've got all this other stuff, everything should work out, right? But they're not paying attention to the people that are moving the gears, planting the plants, distributing the seed, chopping the romaine. They're not paying attention to this. And they hope somehow they're supposed to get along well and be high-performance teams. How does that happen? And what if you put a car together and never oil it or put any water or antifreeze in it or power steering fluid, or what's going to happen? It's going to break down, right? Absolutely. So you got to have maintenance for this. That's what this stuff here is. This is a foundation to start building activities that maintain your group so you can sustain your group. Okay? Now here's the other thing. We talked about norms, being deliberate about building norms. That's what this stuff is here. This is all your norms. Okay? How we're going to act together, how we're going to engage with each other, interact, how we're going to manage conflict, and how do we communicate with each other. That ends up becoming our norms. And that's what I meant by getting deliberate. So when we start out forming, we develop this right away. So whatever storming we got going on, we still know where we're going. Does that make sense? So if there's any dysfunctional behavior that's going on here, it's addressed by all this stuff here. Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. So we're planning ahead of time a framework by which we're going to build our norms instead of hopefully by accident they're going to come out of a group of people who are a bunch of good people here for a good or noble cause and everything should work out, right? That make sense? So you guys are going through a lot of that with the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book and taking the assessments and all that kind of stuff, and that emotional intelligence improvement model that we talked about. That's one of the things that Bruce Lee brought. So he brought disruption, being proactive. Get there first. Don't be reactive, be proactive. So that's what we're doing with this stuff here, is being proactive around what our norms are. Okay? He brought in straightforwardness, the straight punch and going straight in. Actually, one of the tenets of the Wing Chun system is you go after the center line. So you go after the eyes, nose, throat, all the money shots. Eyes, nose, throat, solar plexus, groin is what you're going after all the time. Even if you're over here, you're going after the center line. So very straightforward approach to defending yourself physically. Focus is another thing that he brought on, focusing on the center line, focusing on the antagonist and getting rid of him. That focus was another piece. but also emotional intensity, to throw emotional intensity in. So what that so if the person's coming blindsided, not only do I have the anatomical structure of I'm going like this and energy forward constantly, straight punches which turn into eye jabs, on the bone on the collarbone kind of thing, but also to if something comes up that's you're going to go from setting, you get the stimulus, just do it, taking care of it that way by adding some emotion to what's going on, which is also a disruptor. Because the person is going, wait, I didn't expect that. I had a stick and I'm bigger than him. What happened? Right? So being able to turn that emotion on is an emotional intelligence. Being able to turn it off is an emotional intelligence. And a big part of emotional intelligence is about emotional awareness. So one of the reasons we're studying all that stuff here is because of emotional contagion. In a group, if somebody walks in and they're in a bad mood and they stay that way, it affects the rest of the group. Anybody ever experienced that? Mm-hmm. Absolutely, right? So what we ask people to do is choose a good attitude when they walk in, be positive, proactive, being able to work and collaborate and produce something. That's why we're here. Professionalism standards. So what I want to do first is work on this piece here. We'll get this out of the way, conflict management system. And so we'll just do a little training on that. There's no worksheets to do on this. What I'm going to do is let's just go over this. Actually, let me put you in groups first. How many people do we have here? How many people do we have?
34.
34?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me see. So groups of 4, 8. So let's count to 8. And Aaron, you're number 1.
1, 2,
3.
4, 1. I'm sorry, 5,
6.
7,
You're 6. Okay.
7, 8,
1.
2. 3. 5. 6.
7.
Oh, she's passing. She's a visitor, by the way. She's actually a spy from the banking industry. Who over you? 7?
7.
8.
2, 3,
4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 1. 2.
3,
4. 5. 6.
7, 8,
1.
2.
Okay. So you want to take your stuff. It's going to be a little chaotic. But all the 1s get together, all the 2s get together. Looking good. Let me see. You guys in the back at some point are going to want to get in more of a circular position, but you're okay for now. So we're going to look at this piece here. Okay, it says at the top, leadership, conflict management policy. And by the way, what we're doing today is just getting kind of a rough draft of where we're going to go. What we end up with today doesn't need to be perfect or polished. Just like anything in life, you can always improve it. In fact, as I learned from my girlfriend, good enough is better than perfect, most of the time. Okay, it leaves you room to make mistakes, and then you can make repairs. So, the idea behind the leadership conflict management policy is prevention. Just like that proactiveness, when you're defending yourself on the street, you know what you're going to do if something occurs. Now, why prevention? Let me give you the basis for prevention. Is that, if I can grasp the marker, here's how conflict spirals. We all have simple differences. If those aren't managed well, they can result in misunderstandings very easily. And if the misunderstandings aren't cleared up, they can turn into disagreements. Okay? And if those aren't handled well, they can turn into discord, or basically, does everybody know what I mean by discord? Anybody not know what I mean by discord? So discord is kind of like things are fragmented and shaken up, and we got tension and uncertainty going on. And by the way, if you hear a word I say, because I can tend to use jargon sometimes, if you don't understand a word I say, please raise your hand, because probably at least half the other classroom doesn't know what it means either. Does everybody know what ambiguity means? Ambiguity. Anybody not know what ambiguity means? Okay, you're kind of unclear about that, huh? That's the meaning of ambiguity. Is unclearness, right? You're uncertain. It's neither black nor white. You don't really know. It's kind of in the land of the unknown. So there isn't a hard, oh yeah, that's what it is, kind of a thing. Okay. And then if that's not handled, we can lead to polarization, which is us and them. Anybody been in a workplace where there's us and them? Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely, right? That's fun. How fun is that, right? Oh, and then a couple of quarters ago, I had a girl in a class who said, oh yeah, there's a step beyond that. And I said, oh yeah, what? She said, fights in the parking lot. Well, workplace violence is an issue anymore, right? What's going on? So, the reason we want to practice prevention is we want to keep this stuff up here. Keep it handleable up here. Don't let it spiral into this stuff. If untended, if you don't manage conflict, it will spiral to here. It will grow all by itself, like weeds in a garden, kind of a thing. So that's a big deal for managing conflict and or prevention in the first place. I'm going to throw another little one out at you called the cost of conflict. So I've got a study, 7 different countries, Brazil, Belgium, France, Ireland, Germany, the US, and the UK. And they had a study on the cost of conflict, not only in the cost of dollars and time per hour, but lost opportunity, absenteeism and turnover costs money, replacing people who leave because of conflict, which is the #1 reason people leave workplaces. Conflict with a coworker or conflict with a supervisor is why people leave, the #1 reason, okay? Not the only reason, but the #1. So, let's take, they say that at 2.7 hours a week per person in the United States is lost dealing with conflict. Okay, well, I'm going to do a little math here, and you guys help me out because I need simplicity at math. Well, I'm going to say 2 hours only. I'm going to be conservative, but not 2.7, which is almost 3, but 2 hours, and we're going to pay each of these people 20 bucks an hour just to keep the math simple. Equals 40 bucks per week lost, right? Oh, except in a conflict you have to have 2 people, right? So that's another 40 bucks. And then generally if it is untended, then we have to have a supervisor, and we'll keep that low and conservative, and we'll just bring in him in for 1 hour, and we'll give him 20 bucks an hour too, which is 100 bucks a week, right? Not a lot, 100 bucks. That's a pair of sneakers, right? Oh, wait a minute, we have 50 weeks in the year. So times 50 equals what? $5,000. Okay, number starts going up, yeah?
Is that 2 hours a day or 2 hours a week?
2 hours a week.
Okay.
This is 2 hours a week. Okay, so we're staying conservative here.
Good.
That's $5,000. Oh, wait. We have 100 employees here. Or 50 dyads. So we need 50 times this, which is what? $250,000. So $250,000 a year lost time if we do this conservatively. So a lot of money, right? It's better. If you lost this money, how do you compensate for that? How much revenue do you need to generate to recapture $250,000 at 10% profit? So $250,000, here's your algebra coming in, guys. $250,000 equals 10% of X. What is that?
25,000.
What's that?
25,000.
It's basically 10 times more than this, right? Which is now
Thank you. Other way.
200 and, oops,
It should be 2.5
$2,500,000 that we have to generate in order to compensate for somebody not handling this well. Right? Is there a reason to manage conflict? And we still haven't talked productivity, innovation, lost opportunity, absenteeism, turnover, which costs money, replacement costs, for an employee is 1.5 times the salary of the employee you use. We haven't talked about any of that. This is simply just lost time. Okay? Does that make sense? So do we have a reason to manage conflict? Do we have a reason to keep it from spiraling into this? We have a rational, logical, linear reason. Okay, so that's the whole idea behind this stuff. Prevention. Say please, thank you, and I'm sorry. Use common courtesy. Prevention tool. Simple, right? Very powerful stuff. I actually did this in a restaurant between the cooks and the wait staff. And it worked. Because I insisted on it. When I said cooks, and we had a highly untrained wait staff. I mean, they didn't know they're from there. Okay? Okay. And there was a lot of confusion and chaos. We were constantly compensating for their mistakes, making stuff blah, 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 blah. Nevertheless, don't complain. Always say please, thank you, and I'm sorry. Okay? And it worked. And that's all I did. Okay? The other piece is see your professionalism standards, which is the next piece we're going to work on. But using this stuff here, and you'll see why. Maintain composure in a challenging situation. Offer help, ask for help. Don't say anything bad about anybody to anybody else. Maintain a sense of humor. Be problem solving, not people blaming. Those are the kinds of things we plug into here. Use that. You practice these, and you're minimizing unnecessary conflict. Okay? Eliminate fault finding, sarcasm, and negative gossip. Fault finding is finding fault with somebody. Definite negative dynamic you're throwing into the workplace. You want to talk your work environment, you're finding fault with people? Guess what? If you get to find fault with people, so does she and so does everybody else. Now it becomes a norm. Same thing with negative gossip. People love to gossip? Absolutely. How about if it's positive gossip? Do you hear what Stanley did the other day? It's really cool. He was working with this customer. It was really blah, 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 blah. That's positive gossip. That's okay. Negative gossip, fault finding, get it out of there because it'll spread. Sarcasm comes from an old Greek word meaning to tear flesh apart. Okay? Don't have it. Sarcasm is generally directed at somebody or at least the organization. It's negativity. We don't want, what we want is a positive work environment. Any negativity that goes in here grows like weeds in a garden, so we want to keep it out. Watch out for kidding and teasing. You got to have high levels of trust. If you have low levels of trust and you're kidding and teasing somebody, anybody seen that erupt?
No.
Yeah, you're kidding and teasing somebody, it's like somebody, boom, they go off, right? Low levels of trust. We want to build trust. Okay, what's some other ones here? What else did it? Oh. So, when I taught conflict management for 15 years, and about 4 or 5 years ago, I ran across these guys, a Center for Creative Leadership, top 5 executive company, training company in the world. Their graduates are coming back and go, great training guys, but how do we deal with conflict? And they're like, oh, whoops, the stickiest thing you can do. And they're the top 5 training company in the world. So they championed Eckerd College, they'd come up with something. Well, what they did was they came up with behaviors. Negative behaviors, destructive behaviors, and constructive behaviors. And the destructive behaviors, what this is saying in here, stay away from this stuff. Winning at all costs, displays of anger, demeaning behaviors, including nonverbal demeaning behaviors. You know, you do really good work here. And the rolling of the eyes, demeaning behavior. Okay, retaliating is another one. Yielding, avoiding, hiding emotions, self-criticizing, or the passive destructive behaviors. Stay away from those, is what this system is advising, right? Make sure conflict isn't happening by checking in. Be proactive. Yeah, Jay.
Can you give me an example of passive destructive?
Yielding. So,
Avoiding.
yielding, avoiding, hiding emotions, and self-criticism. Okay, self-criticism, when I first saw that, I went, why is that destructive? And I started thinking about it. Well, why, if you're self-criticizing, what are you criticizing? Something that happened in the past, right? Not something that happened right now. Something that happened in the past. You're brooding. It's called ruminating on something negative, so you're carrying that around with you. What are you bringing into the room?
Contagion.
Negativity, absolutely. If you did something wrong or made a mistake, you make it right, you move on. Period. Yeah.
Why would having emotions be bad though? Like if you were trying to like contain that in yourself and you didn't want it to like spread to other people, why
Yeah.
would that be bad?
Good question. And here's the deal. If you suppress emotions, they don't go away. That's the source of passive-aggressive behavior. Your emotions don't go away. Expressing your emotions, which will show up next, is what you want to do. Now, doing them well, managing your emotions, that's why you have the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book. You want to acknowledge your emotion. This is frustration coming up. That's the notice and name it. Oh, I'm starting to feel frustrated. That's frustration. Notice and name it. Set it aside. Choose new thinking. Now you're not suppressing the emotion or hiding it. You're acknowledging it. That makes not good or bad. It's what is. Just I don't want to do that anymore. Or maybe I do. I can choose to stay frustrated. The other day I got impatient on the road, and because I was hungry and irritable, I chose to stay impatient. Absolutely, right? So, yeah. So hiding emotions means you're stuffing them down here. Guess what? They're going to blow. Tell people you're a safe place to communicate. One of the things I did when I had a job where I had to work with people was went to them and said, hey, you know what? If you got an issue with me, feel free to come. I'm a safe place to come to. I won't get defensive. We can talk about what the issue is. It's probably communication. By the way, it's probably about communication. Most conflicts are, I sat in a small claims court last night, right? And it was over a renter and a tenant. And she says, well, we were friends. This is classic. We were friends, and I told her she could pay me this, but I didn't write anything down, and I thought she was paying me for the month before, and she wanted to pay me for the month ahead, and I thought, but I didn't write anything down. And just this huge ball of non-communication, miscommunication, and they were now no longer friends. The friendship had gone down the toilet, and it was over a difference of about $500, and they were willing to fight it out in court because of bad communication. And 95% of the time, go after the communication. There's the culprit. It isn't generally the people. Okay? So a little disclaimer in the middle there. So tell people you're a safe place to come to check in with, to communicate with. Be open. That's what takes vulnerability. Yeah.
Communication is one of the top 5 skills employers look for.
Top one. I'm telling you, we've been talking to CEOs around the valley, and every single one of them said, I want somebody that can communicate, and they know how to learn. It's almost like the skill sets don't matter. We can teach them the skills. Okay? Can they communicate, and do they know how to learn? Can they get along? Can they communicate with people to get along, get the job done? Okay? Yeah, absolutely. So, practice, here's the active constructive behaviors, which are reach out, get the other person's perspective, express the emotions, say I'm uncertain about this, you know, hey, I told that joke the other day, you looked like you were off-put a little bit, I'm feeling a little uneasy about this, I don't want our working relationship to be messed up, I want it to be clean and clear, are you okay with this, what's your take on this, get their perspective, how are you feeling, what's going on. So get those emotions out there. If you hide the emotions, it's destructive. If you get them out on the table and you can deal with them, they'll go away. They'll dissipate. In fact, Jill Bolte-Taylor, who I'll show you a video on, and other neuroscience, the emotion can come up. If you choose to engage with it, you will stay with it for days, weeks, months, years at a time. If you just acknowledge it as an emotion, set it aside, it will go away within 90 seconds. Okay? That cool? Kind of freeing, huh? The only reason you get emotional and stay that way is because you choose to. And generally that's because of an automatic response that you've had ever since before the womb, in the womb, pre-verbal, all that stuff. Now you've got this automatic machinery called you engaging in that response and staying there. Does that make sense? So express emotion, create solutions. Yeah?
I think the trick would be is to recognize the emotion when it's happening.
Absolutely.
Because I can see that in me a lot. Being emotionally involved and not realizing that
Yeah.
this emotion is really my decision, not the actual
Yeah.
problem.
Yep.
So
And
how to be self-aware, stop
Absolutely.
that destructive
Absolutely.
behavior.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what that emotional intelligence improvement model is all about. is when it's coming up, notice it. And now you can notice it when it's there. Oh, geez, I'm frustrated right now. Let me take that frustration and set it aside. The other thing you can do is you start getting skill is when it starts emerging, is you can notice when it's emerging, that emotion. Oh, here comes that impatience again. And walk away. So that's all prevention, okay? Practice all that stuff and you minimize the potential for unnecessary negative conflict to arise, okay? If there is an existing conflict, go directly to the other person. Say, hey, I want to clear this up. Now, here's the thing about conflict. If you catch something like I did with her, say, hey, I said that the other day, I want to make sure it's a little bit, did I offend you? Yes or no? No? Cool, we're okay. Yes? Hey, I'm sorry, this won't happen again. Is there anything else I can do to repair what happened? We got that out of the way. Caught it, nipped it in the bud, caught it fairly quickly. Grudge holders, things going on for long periods of time, more complex, knotted together, woven like a tight fabric. You either got to cut, that's divorce. Right? You got kids in the middle, more complex, you're talking tearing this puppy apart, cutting it in half. It gets painful. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say, in our groups, do we make up our own ingredients for these systems, or are we to go by what you're?
What I'm going to do is ask you to adopt this,
Okay.
okay? Around your professionalism standards and this stuff here, you're going to make up your own. But you're going to work from a framework. You're going to work from something rather than pulling it out of thin air, rather than making it all from scratch. Yeah, so go directly to the other person. If you don't feel comfortable or empowered enough to do that, go to somebody else. Go to Rigo over here and say, hey man, I'm having a problem with this guy over here, and I need some advice or an encouragement. I don't want to tell him my story and how wrong he is. I need some advice or encouragement. Rigo gives me some advice or encouragement. I go to the other person, I reach out, I get their perspective, I express emotions, I create solutions, whatever that means. Now, you might have to delay responding in order to figure out what that means, how that sounds. What is that going to sound like when I go talk to this person? Okay? Do some reflective thinking about it. Okay? That kind of stuff. Then go directly to the other person. Then, if you can't resolve the conflict, bring in a third-party mediator. So now you got a system, at the default of which is you got a third party that can step in and resolve the thing for you. Why do we want to go all this trouble?
So we don't
Save
waste
money.
$2,500,000.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? And to create a positive work environment so we can get high-performance teams, so we can get focused action, so we can get our bottom line results. What's that?
And get a raise.
Yeah, and get a raise, absolutely. So, that's the conflict management system, okay? Is everybody okay with adopting that as it is right now? We can always mess with it later. Again, rough draft is a rough draft day, okay? So the next piece we want to go to is on the next page. It's called the Professionalism Standards Worksheet. So what you're going to do, so it's broken down into sample categories. Don't worry about your mission and vision. We'll cover that more anyway, because this is on one of your assignments too. So understanding how missions and visions work is one of the goals of this class. So whether it's for you or your group or your organization, we can mess with that, okay? Again, like I said, a rough draft might be your mission is to learn how to work together in groups so that you can take this information and learn how to apply it on the street and get an A in this class. Is that a good mission?
Yeah.
Cool. There's your mission, right? Your vision is you walk out of this class with an A and you know how to work well better. You're an effective communicator, you're an effective problem solver, that kind of stuff, okay? So, there's sample categories like communication, teamwork, accountability, respect, and so on. And there's sample behaviors in here that you want to either accept or reject. Now, as a group, so the first under, let's say teamwork, offer help, ask for help, bring each other up, have fun, joke around, practice collaboration, build and sustain positive customer and coworker relationships. Does that relate to you? You decide. You guys as a group decide. Do we have customer and coworker relationships? Well, kind of maybe. Maybe we rephrase it. Okay? So pull from here, but this isn't the only list. Pull from your experience. Pull from what your grandma said 15 years ago and you go, wow, that was really cool. I'm hanging on to that. Plug that in if it works for you. But as a group, see if this won't work for you, okay? So what you're gonna do now is, in your groups, is work on this and come up with a set of professionalism standards, positive engagement practices, working contract. You can even change the name, title of the piece if you want to.
Are
Yeah.
we doing one collaborative one? Or
Yes.
each other?
Yeah. So the idea is that you all create it. Now here's the cool part. The cool part is, in the workplace, I'm your boss. I'm not mandating this on you. You guys are creating it. So this is now the group's product, not me. Does that make sense? All I'm doing is facilitating this exercise so you guys can work amongst yourselves to make this happen. ¿Make a la sense? Yeah.
My grandma taught me how you act is what you attract.
Nice. Cool. Plug that in. Plug whatever it is you want. It's your group agreement. There isn't any right or wrong. There isn't any hard and fast. What's going to work. Again, this is a rough draft. Now, if you're in the work world, what you want to do is 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, go over this and see if it's still working. Go over and modify it. Relook at, remember that evaluate at the bottom, mission, vision, capacity, all that, sustain, evaluate. Evaluate whether this is working. What's working, what's not working, what do we do differently? Okay? Are the instructions clear?
Are
Yes.
we filling out the communication worksheet?
Hang on, one thing at a time.
Okay.
Okay? So we're gonna, so, good question. There's some other worksheets in here. Just do this professionalism standard, and there's 2 pages to it, or 1.5 pages. Okay?
So we're basically doing a rough draft of this ourselves right now?
Yeah.
It's not circle.
Okay.
I look at it.
Oh, here's another one. Give yourselves a name as a group. As a group name, it could be Los Rigobertos or something, I don't know.
And what I'll do is I'll have to find it.
If you don't understand, you have to ask. There are no.
Any group, what was that like for you?
Interesting.
Okay? Interesting. What else?
We felt it was pretty, yours was pretty all-inclusive. A lot of the stuff you had was like what you really need.
Okay. Well, actually, disclaimer, a lot of that stuff came from working with real groups, like your group at the casino. Working with real groups, and a lot of that information came from the groups themselves, not from me. So, yeah, so a lot of it's real world, so, yeah. Anybody else? What else?
I thought it was pretty easy, like when we were going into it, and we just got in, and I got here late, so that just getting thrown into a group, just from the 10 minutes that I was here before, it was easy to just talk to these people and
Cool.
write
Yeah,
them out.
good, yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons is you're putting a framework to it, you've got some examples, some prompts that you can use. Because before, I went to a workshop, and the guy said, use a worksheet, dude. I said, well, okay. So I started putting worksheets to this stuff, and it helps the people that are doing it. I give them some framework. They go, oh, this, yes, no, yeah, what about? And, yeah, instead of just pulling it out of the air. Yeah.
We looked at our MTBI to see the extroverts and see the
Ah.
dynamics that we have going in our group,
Good for you.
so,
So you got a head start on the effects of style diversity assignment.
yes, I guess.
Perfect. Okay. All right, everybody ready for the next step? Okay. So, here's, it's called a meeting model. Okay? We want to go over that real quickly. I'll give you kind of an idea. Again, all we're doing is getting some good enough rough drafts today. Okay? And as we work it is where we're going to get the value out of it. As we work this in the groups, as we work what this stuff is, that's where we're going to get the value. Coming up with a polished precision paper today is less valuable. Okay? What we want to do is just get an idea, get some traction, get some kind of feel for it. It's like riding the bike and just before you get your balance, or maybe you just get your balance. The rest is repetition, is the mother of skill stuff. Okay? So this meeting model is developed because actually I use this as an intervention tool to do my master's thesis project. Okay? If you talk to pretty much anybody, including you guys in here in this audience, how many people have wasted time in meetings? At least half of you. Okay. Yeah. Here's, it's called a meeting model. Okay? We want to go over that real quickly. I'll give you kind of an idea. Again, all we're doing is getting some good enough rough drafts today, okay? And as we work it is where we're gonna get the value out of it. As we work this in the groups, as we work what this stuff is, that's where we're gonna get the value. Coming up with a polished precision paper today is less valuable, okay? What we wanna do is just get an idea, get some traction, get some kind of feel for it. It's like riding the bike and just before you get your balance, or maybe you just get your balance. The rest is repetition, is the mother of skill stuff, okay? So this meeting model is developed because, actually I use this as an intervention tool to do my master's thesis project, okay? If you talk to pretty much anybody, including you guys in here, in this audience, how many people have wasted time in meetings? At least half of you, okay, yeah. And so that's kind of national statistics. Anywhere from 40 to 80% of time in meetings in this nation is wasted, depending on who you talk to. The reason is people aren't focused, they're not on the same page. Off-task behaviors are not taken care of. So what I did was created a little model on one sheet here, trying to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible, as lean as possible, to come up with. So starting at the bottom are some roles. What are the roles of people? By the way, you want to know this in groups, role ambiguity, okay, not certain about who you are, what you're supposed to be, your level of authority, all that kind of uncertainty stuff, is a huge dynamic in negative group process. Being unclear about what your role is a huge piece. Talk about that emotional contagion, add that up over time, and 5 or 8 out of 10 people don't know what their role is, and you've got a huge negative, messy, muddy thing. Okay, so getting clear about what role clarity is your friend. If you walk out of group process knowing one thing, know that. Okay, so the first piece we have on here is a facilitator. Those people are running the process. Okay, and strictly speaking, they're supposed to stay out of the content. This is going to be a hard kind of setting to do that in, but I just want to expose you to that skill set, okay? So they just make sure the agenda is stayed on time, all that kind of stuff. Another person is the recorder. The recorder is the person who takes action items. And in a group discussion, one of their jobs is to identify, oh, that sounds like an action item. Because in the swirl of conversation, taking action doesn't necessarily pop up as obvious. So the recorder is there to say, is that an action item? Well, yeah, it is. Well, I'll take care of that piece. I'll go do some research. You guys are going to help each other with home. I'll go do some research and share that with you guys, because I know where that's at. Okay, you're going to do that. What's your name?
Haley.
Ailey. So Ailey's going to take care of that research by when? Deadline date. The recorder's to capture all that. What's the task? Who's the owner? And the owner doesn't necessarily have to do it themselves. They can get help. And what's the deadline date? So when are you going to get that done by, Haley?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay, noon?
Sure.
Okay, great, the more specificity the better. Recorder captures that, that goes back into the minutes, if you will, or the next agenda. Did it get done? Okay, that way the ball doesn't get dropped. This is where the ball gets dropped. That's a good idea, Haley's gonna go do it. If we don't have a by when, it can get dropped real easily. Us humans do that a lot, okay? And we have a timer, and the timer's job is to say, because the agenda is timed, we're going to spend 10 minutes on this, 15 minutes on that, 10 minutes, blah, 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 okay? The timer's job is to say, for a 10-minute item, say, you've got 3 minutes left. Okay, kind of like I was doing with you guys, right? You got 3 minutes left. Okay, and the group says, well, we better wrap this up, okay? Or do we need, no, we want to spend more time. The facilitator needs to be flexible, and there's some facilitator traits over here. You guys want more time? If the group says yes, then you're honoring the wisdom of the group. If they're going, and they'll have the wisdom. They'll say, you know what? No, let's get done because we want to get through this meeting and get everything covered. Because if you spend more time on that thing, there's not going to be enough time on the other things. Does that make sense? So the timer's job is to let the facilitator know and the rest of the group know they're running out of time and how much time they do have left. Now, the timer doesn't say you're out of time. The timer says you have X amount of minutes left. Okay? Say a third of the time left. It's 15 minutes, you got 5 minutes left. That kind of a thing, okay? Clear? Okay. And then the members of the group have a role as well. And their role is to support the process, support the timer, support the agenda, support the structure, support the facilitator. Huge role. versus not having a role, okay? So everybody has a role in this meeting thing, okay? Now, the facilitator has some skill sets over here that we're talking about: honoring the wisdom of the group, flexibility, guiding the process, staying out of the content as much as possible. There's some disclaimers about that when we cover that. The agenda itself is timed. Generally, you want to have it around the table at the beginning of the meeting. Now, this is the group, and think outside of the box, think outside of this classroom. When you're out in the world running meetings, you have it around the table. How's everything going? Give me something positive in 30 seconds or less that's happened to you since we last met. Sets the tone for the meeting. We talked about emotional contagion. We're setting a positive emotional contagion tone here. So even if you're having to deliver bad news, you've got a positive start to the meeting. Does that make sense? Okay. Then you launch into the meeting, you cover the old action items, the old decisions, what we had decided on. Is everything up to date? Did she actually get that done by tomorrow at noon? If not, what happened? She got it done 2 days later, or she ran into a glitch, or she found something better, blah, blah, progress update, okay? Then there's new discussions. What are we going to talk about today, okay? And then what decisions might come out of those discussions? Maybe some, maybe none. Out of those decisions, are there any action items, any new action items, okay? And then there's a parking lot. The parking lot is a really cool tool. Because one of the off-task behaviors is some people will come up with an idea that's off the agenda. Okay, so you come up with an idea that's off the agenda. As a facilitator, I'm going, okay, well, is that relating to the agenda? No. Okay, can we put that in the parking lot? Yes. So I'm paying attention, I'm respecting her contribution by putting it somewhere we can pay attention to later instead of just cutting her off cold. And it might be a great idea. Here's the other flexibility piece. The other group members go, wow, that's really cool. Like, do you guys want to go with that idea that you just brought up and go off? Absolutely, man, we can use this. Honor the group's wisdom. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So those are some of the facilitation skills. Now, disclaimer. Facilitation skills take some repetitions, take some doing. I'm exposing you to what it is, what it's about, not that you're going to get really good at facilitation skills. Facilitation skills, just like mediation, require that neutrality to stay out of and stay with, guide the process so it gets done with the help of the timer, recorder, and members, okay? And you want to come up with what used to be called ground rules. You can call them ground rules, guidelines, off-task behaviors, distractions, whatever you want to call it. Stuff that's going to keep you from, and here's the analogy I use. When you're having a meeting, what you're really doing, in a sense, a metaphor is you're dragging a wagon up a hill full of rocks to build this house, okay? And you've got this wagon, and it's full of rocks, and you got people pulling it, you got people pushing it, okay? And if we want to get this up the hill, we want to make progress, and we're going to work in Congress, not like on DC, okay. Not like in Washington, DC. We're going to work with progress in Congress, okay? What we want to stay away from is regress, a la people pulling us backwards. And in groups, that happens when new people come into a meeting and they haven't had an orientation about where we're at. So they come up with all kinds of good ideas that we already covered ground on, as they pull you back, okay? So, you also have digression, people who want to go off to the side, okay, which keeps us from going up. That's where we use the parking lot. We've digressed off the agenda. We say, is that a good idea? We want to put it in the parking lot? Yes, there it goes, okay? And then transgressing is crossing the line, right? Is stepping over the boundaries, stepping over the ground rules, okay? So one of the things that happens is you set up these ground rules guidelines about dominating discussions, about sidebar conversations, about any of these kinds of things for your group that you think might help, that might keep you from getting up the hill. Does that make sense? This is the outcome. It's going to take us 1 hour meeting to get up the outcome. Well, the reason it's taking 2 hours is because it's got a bunch of this and a bunch of this going on. Does that make sense? So we're not making quick progress. Does that make sense? So the reason for the off-task behavior, managing the off-task behaviors, we have ground rules, guidelines, guardrails, whatever you want to call them, okay? Does that make sense? So yeah, so they include all the things I mentioned, Off-task good ideas is another one. Agenda departures, battling egos can be an issue. All that kind of stuff can be. So how do you deal with that? Well, the group agrees what these are going to be, and they give permission to the facilitator to manage them. That way the group doesn't have to deal with it. So if Stanley starts dominating the discussion here, the facilitator is empowered to take that somewhere else. Okay, Stanley has a lot of good information. Raquel? Raquel, what do you think? That's a technique, those are facilitative techniques. What do you think that Raquel's input? If he keeps going on, and this is the stickiest one, is a dominating discussion besides battling egos, which usually go hand in hand. If he goes on, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to talk to him on the side. Say, Stanley, you've really been dominating the discussion. We haven't gotten input from the other folks, and I ask you to tone it down a little bit, allow other people to speak up. Will that be okay? Include other people. Okay? Okay, sure. So he comes back and he either does that or he keeps dominating the discussion. Okay? Now, I've tried to distract him first. I've talked to him privately second, and he keeps doing it. Stanley? He's dominating this. Stanley? Yeah? I'm going to have to ask you to leave the room. What choice do I have? Do I let him keep dominating the discussion? How well is the group going to fare if he's allowed to dominate the discussion? They're going to get demoralized, right? Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the room. Or can you commit to not dominating the discussion? And that's being straightforward. Remember the straight punches, the straightforwardness about that's being straightforward. If you don't call it, it's one of the biggest things I learned as a group facilitator. You've got to call what's going on. And the unwillingness to call it allows the thing to live. And if it's dysfunctional, it's going to harm the group. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and you don't have to be brutal about it, because here's the cool part. If you guys ever get to be managers, or even as co-workers, whatever, you can use objective language. If you can talk about his behavior, not him. Stanley's a great guy. In fact, he's my brother. But he's a great guy, but his behaviors are bringing the group down. Okay? He's pulling the wagon backward or off to the side. But the behavior's got to leave. If he's going to cling to the behavior, then he goes with it. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's do the meeting model worksheet because it's a big chunk and we get it out of here. Let's go down through these 4 items. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then we'll work on the communication worksheet for 5 minutes, and then we'll get out of here. Okay? Ready? Set? Go.
So off-task behaviors would be like, we're sitting here having a meeting about how the cafeteria doesn't serve good food. But then someone comes in and says, hey, the drinking fountains aren't nice here. That's really not all that related. Or, hey, we need new computers in the math lab.
Right.
The sidebar.
There's this thing called a communication worksheet. Just go down and figure that out. So, how do we contact each other? And you're not, a lot of this stuff may not be relevant for you, but just share some phone numbers and contact information, maybe some email addresses or whatever. If you guys want to set up a forum board or discussion board, let me know and I can do that for you. Or figure out how to do it. Okay? Okay. Yeah, emails, texts, whatever, however you want to do it, however you communicate. Yeah. What's that?
Oh, gotcha.
You want to just do numbers? I don't mind. I'm just going to write 1 through 4 and then we'll just pass all the papers around. Everybody write the number down.
You're not going to do it.
Our phone number, and then about Guys,
give me your attention, please. You can stick around and finish up if you want. I need to wrap you up to be done by 1600 hours. Tell you the military. So let me wrap up a little bit, okay? So if I can have your attention up here real quick. If you can hear me, raise your hand. 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 Okay, cool. So basically what we did today was overviewed this stuff. You guys went through and did a rough draft of this. We went over the conflict management system that you informally accepted for now. We did some work on how your meetings might run and how you might communicate with each other. Now, whatever you did today is great. However far you got is great. What we'll do when we come back next week, we'll polish this up, touch it up, see how it might work for you, and go from there, okay? And then again, the other thing we're going to do in class is really go and in groups and outside of groups is go over the homework assignments so you guys really understand this really well. And this is content. This classroom is content, right? How you apply it on the street is 90%. So in a sense, as good as this class might be, it's fairly worthless unless you go live it, okay? Unless you have ways to apply it, and that's my job, is to figure out how you can apply this stuff. All right, God bless you, go forward, see you next week.